Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Today, we'll be exploring the practical applications of AI tools for bookkeeping, and we'll be looking at the opportunities, tips, and possibly some lessons learned from an expert in the industry. So let me welcome Cassandra.
Hi, David. Thanks so much for having me along today.
You're very welcome. Just to let everyone know, my name's David Mitchell. I'm the CEO of Grassroots IT. I have a background and special interest in helping teams thrive through proven technology. Now, AI may not be proven technology or considered proven technology by some, but it is here and it is definitely here to stay. So I'm excited to invite Cassandra here today to help us understand how it is being utilised in the world of bookkeeping and how we might leverage it for our own business. I've worked with Cass for over 5 years, and she's always professional, insightful, and a recognised leader in her field. So welcome, Cass. Could you please let us know a little bit more about your journey so far and what you are passionate about?
Yeah, thank you, David. Cassandra Scott. I'm based out of Brisbane, and for the last 20 years, I've actually run my own bookkeeping practice. And out of those last 20 years, for probably about the last 10 years, I've been heavily involved in the cloud accounting space, particularly Xero, and sitting on some sort of national panels with Xero, but diving deep into everything technology within the accounting and bookkeeping industry. And in the last few years, I've really started to explore opportunities with AI technology within bookkeeping practices, and also the services that are provided to SMEs, either internally by their own bookkeeping teams, or for those businesses that use external teams to provide that support, how that support can be streamlined and leveraged using AI technology. So one of the things I'm actually very, very passionate about is actually increasing the professionalism of the bookkeeping industry as a whole, and making sure that small businesses are getting the best information that they can around their financial records and data at the right time, at the highest level of quality, and so that that information can be used by the business owners with their business stakeholders for whatever purposes may be there. And AI is becoming a significant component around doing that successfully these days.
Awesome. It is great to have you here. So without further ado, we have to acknowledge that AI has exploded. It's enhancing nearly every app that we use in some way. Tell us a little bit more about what you've seen in the bookkeeping field.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, David. And I think one of the things that happens quite universally is there's the general term AI is actually used for a combination of both AI and automation. And I actually don't think that's necessarily incorrect. I think that's probably quite relevant in that automation has been something that our industry has been exposed to for probably the last 10 to 15 years, that the processes that we used to undertake in collating and providing financial data and working through the accounting and bookkeeping processes have been automated heavily by a number of the tools that are actually in the market. And, you know, one of the simplest ones we can look at is the accounting software, the Xeros, the MYOBs, the QBOs, and leveraging off of things like automated bank feeds, bringing data in an automatic way. The last few years, though, the marketplace has actually seen, as you said, the evolution of AI within the industry, and this is where it overlays against automation. And AI is where you're starting to use the data and use the process of automation and allow the technology to start to make decisions on your behalf. So, you know, if we simply define automation, it's, you know, tech performing tasks or processes with minimal human intervention. But when we overlay AI on top of that, it's actually the machines and the intelligence sort of mimicking human intelligence, learning from data, recognizing patterns, and making decisions on that learning. So the AI in its purest form is now sitting on top of automation, which has been around and which most people, I think, have been using quite significantly and well for at least the last, you know, 10 to 15 years.
Great. And as you've got up here, does it enhance productivity?
Absolutely.
And how?
So yeah, so it definitely enhances productivity. So as a bookkeeper in practice for the last 20 years, one of the most frustrating things that I ever had to come across was dealing with, those paper-based receipts that you get off of clients, or, even working within businesses. And I spent, 30 years working within businesses, SMEs, before stepping into practice. And the bane of my life was always dealing with the paperwork and the mundane and the routine and to a certain extent, the simplicity of the paperwork. And, it's a bit like monkey see, monkey do in some instances. It becomes very repetitive. It becomes very time consuming, and AI and automation has seen those things simplified and being able to be sped up in terms of the bookkeeping and the accounting cycle. So if we look at simple tools like document extraction or data extraction tools, and we'll talk about a little more about those a little bit further on, instead of me having to sort of take in each individual piece of paper and take the data off of that and manually key it into the accounting system, we now have technology and tools that do that. And over the years, those tools themselves have evolved in that they used to just sort of do some OCR recognition, take the data out, punch it into a certain field without any intelligence around what it was doing, but it was still simplifying the work process. And now today, those same tools are applying the AI logic over it and actually making decisions based on other information that's available to them. So what, for a client maybe used to take me 2 or 3 hours in terms of, processing paperwork, could now in theory be done in, between 30 minutes to an hour using technology. Bank feeds are probably the most common one that most people at some point have been exposed to, not having to worry about getting that information from your bank or waiting for the postie to arrive at the end of the month with the bank statement, which could be missing the 2 days before your end of month or end of year. But having that data coming forward to you on a day-to-day basis, so real-time work with real-time data for real-time information. So absolutely, it enhances productivity.
Right. Well, let's dive a little deeper then. So before we do, you've already given us some practical examples. How well, let you go a little bit further, deeper into the tools to run your business.
Yeah.
And I've got some
So
questions for you after you do.
you've always got questions. It's good fun. Love questions. So AI tools for bookkeeping, I think when we're talking about bookkeeping, and if, the audience will either have somebody internally providing and undertaking the bookkeeping work on their behalf within their business. It might be an employee, it might be somebody that comes in, you might actually even be doing it yourself. Or you might be engaging with an external service provider, and that might be done through a contracted bookkeeping practice. It might be your accounting practice who's doing it. But fundamentally, when we look at AI tools for bookkeeping, I don't like to just restrict it to what are the tools that are used to facilitate the bookkeeping process, because I think there's a bigger discussion around also the tools that run your business, and that the bookkeeping tools are actually a subset of those. And what we're talking about here, if we link back to the conversation with productivity, is actually being more productive with our time. And if we're more productive with our time overall, that frees us up, or it frees our team up, or it frees our external service provider up to do other things for us and within our businesses. And those things can actually be far more strategic than literally sitting here and just punching data in, and utilizing skill sets that may at the moment be untapped, because time has been committed to what I call the routine, financial management processes within a business. So if we're looking at I might jump to the, tools to streamline your bookkeeping. You've got your obvious ones out there. You've got your Xeros, you've got your MYOBs, you've got your QBOs online. They're all working off of cloud-based. You've got immediacy of information. You've got the ability to store documents in the cloud. You've got smart learning already occurring within those tools. That's here and that's now, and that's being worked on today. But where this is moving forward within those accounting products, and it's not too far off yourself, and there are actually already some instances of it in the market, is how to then look at the jobs that need to be done within the bookkeeping cycle, and how can we automate and simplify and iterate those jobs to be done. So if we use Xero as an example, they've just come out with a new tool called JAX, J-A-X. It's very, very new, and it's I think in some instances it's still in beta testing. But if you're a sole trader or a business, a trades business perhaps, and you're out seeing your clients, or you're a consultant and you're working away, imagine being able to go into your accounting software, open up a screen and just saying to it, look, based on the information that was in my diary, I've actually finished working with, Bob Smith, my client, in delivering those plumbing services that were in the calendar invite. I did 3 hours with him. Can you raise the invoice and send that out for me? Now, all you've done is had a very, very simple conversation with the tech around doing that. But the output of that from a technology perspective is an invoice is raised to the client. It's raised with the correct accounting treatment around it. It's raised at the number of hours that you've iterated. It's raised automatically at the hourly rate that you've perhaps stipulated somewhere else in the process, or that your tech is actually looking at and extracting, and it's sent out the door automatically to your client, and you've actually not even put your hands on the keyboard. So when we're talking about bookkeeping tools, what we want to correlate them back to and actually think about in terms of their utilization is jobs that are to be done. If we look again at that from an accounting and bookkeeping financial management process, imagine logging into your accounting file, whether it be QBO or MYOB or Xero, and imagine that you've got what we call an agent, a bookkeeping agent. So at the moment, you've potentially got a person within your practice or externally to your practice that does this. But imagine if you've got somebody or an agent, a tech agent, that actually jumps into your email account to start with, extracts out of that email account any supplier invoices that have been sent to you overnight, automatically moves those through into your accounting system, and that may be through another document extraction tool that actually pulls out the relevant data, the supplier name, the amounts, the dates, all of that information. Based on the learning that it's undertaken by utilising data that's already in your accounting system, it codes that data and gives it the general ledger categorisation and also the GST treatment categorisation that is appropriate. It puts it into your bills to be paid. And you may also have a rule that sort of says at the end of every week, I'd like a list of all of the bills that need to be paid, and have a batch payment file that's actually prepared for those bills that need to be paid. Now, in theory, that may be done without any human intervention with the technology that is currently evolving into the marketplace. And I can imagine there's a number of people sitting there screaming at the moment about the human side of it. What happens to the people? The people don't actually disappear in this process, but what happens is their role in the process actually changes. So that person that normally would log in, instead of logging in and having everything from scratch to deal with, is potentially in there dealing with any exceptions that have been flagged. So something may have come through that's actually not quite able to be determined by the AI agent based on everything that it's learnt. The human comes in and actually starts to look at it and makes the human decisions that need to be made. So look, this sounds really simplistic, and it sounds really scary in the concept of removing people from a process, but this is where technology is going.
Very interesting, Cass. So a couple of questions come to mind there. One is human oversight, and potentially recognizing errors. I mean, we've all seen the OCRs that get it wrong. And then my other question is around workflows. Now, you call those jobs to be done. There seems to how do you change from where we are now using Xero to implement? We're talking about Xero at the moment, to implement something like JAX. There must be different workflows, different training. How would you go about that?
Yeah, there certainly will be different workflows, David, but what you're going to find is the technology suppliers that are implementing this will actually take you on that pathway with them. So if we use JAX as an example with Xero, and as I said, it is in beta at the moment, it's going to be released to, a cohort of users that are in certain industries where it's potentially been identified that, there will be a higher level of uptake. What will happen is people will start to work with that technology and start to redesign and reconfigure their workflows. And that information is actually going to come back, and, whether it's AI that starts to bring this information back or not, my expectation is that it will. But that information is going to come back and be disseminated out through businesses. So I think one of the things, interestingly, we've seen with the increase in technology and cloud-based technology and some of the AI tools that are in the market is that there's a lot more open source sharing of knowledge and information. So whereas, how we did things and why we did things and the methodology that we did used to be very, very stovepiped, there's a lot more hive mind thinking about what is best practice and what is standard practice across a particular industry. So when you're looking at these sorts of workflows and features, a lot of the tech that's developing, and if you look at the three incumbents in the accounting space, Xero, MYOB, QBO, they're all about data. And when you're looking at the data, don't forget, they're not just having access to your data, they have got hundreds and thousands and millions of data pieces, and they're able to see how people are using the technology. And they're going to come out and say, we've implemented this new piece of AI or tech within our product that is going to do this for you and your business. And here are our recommendations about how you and your team can interface with this to gain its maximum potential. Now, this isn't going to happen in, 2 years or 5 years. It's going to happen in 10 years and 15 years. It's going to start now, absolutely. But it's actually going to be an iterative change in those workflows as we, I think, intellectually overcome the concept of this is something that I need to sort of have my hands on and do myself. So the way that we think about our work and the way that we think about our workflows is actually going to change. And it's a ride that I think that we're all going to be going on. And, I'm the first one here. I'm sitting on that ride already with some of the things that I do. And it actually, in some instances, it can be a bit daunting and scary. And, I came from an era where when I started working, we didn't have computers. So I've seen the transition from, manual ledgers into desktop computer technology, into cloud-based technology. And now I'm sitting on the advent of, AI technology in that process. So it's an interesting ride that we are going to go on, and how we're going to adopt that and those workflows in our business is still something I think that's to be surfaced. But yeah, it's absolutely going to change, David.
Great. I do want to dive into an example of a couple of the tools, but a question for you first. You do the bookkeeping for Grassroots IT, so this is how we've worked together well.
Yep.
And I know there's been a few times that you've raised anomalies in our numbers, and you do that via an AI tool.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we've been using a particular AI tool called Expert, and it's on the list there. There's a couple of others out there that do it, but Expert is one that we have utilised. And Expert's been in the market for probably about 4 or 5 years, so it's not new. And when working with the likes of Grassroots, providing the bookkeeping services to them, one of the things that we're always highly focused on as a bookkeeping practice, and whether we're working for David or even my own business, is about the concept of data quality. And our methodology for reviewing that historically had been very, very manual. We'd run big reports, we'd have a look at the data, we'd try and sort of dive into it and go, oh, that looks a bit anomalous, flag it out, open it up, have a look and go, actually, no, that's okay, close it back down and then move on to the next one. So that was really, really time labour intensive for us. We connect up data quality tools, and what it has the ability to do is review that data against a number of different algorithms, AI driven algorithms, for things that are specific to the bookkeeping industry. So for those of you that work with bookkeepers, we can be a little bit anal sometimes about the things that float our boat in terms of data quality and data accuracy. So this tool has been developed with the bookkeeping compliance cycle in mind, and what are the big things that actually trigger us when we're reviewing data. And instead of me having to source it as a human, tech is now doing this, and it's doing it at a far, far more granular level than I ever can. So the technology is not just looking at the transaction in the accounting file, it's actually also looking at the attachment to the transaction in the accounting file, and it may be going out to other external resources. And ABR, the Australian Business Register, is one of those resources. And it's looking at the client record or the supplier record in those resources and saying, hang on a sec, by the way, did you know that this particular supplier is no longer registered for GST or has had their ABN cancelled or should be registered for GST? And the transaction that you've got in your accounting software actually contradicts with what we're seeing from a legal perspective. Now, that mightn't seem important to a lot of people. As bookkeepers, it's something we're aware of, but the consequences of that for somebody like Grassroots are if the ATO comes knocking and they're audited, the ATO doesn't say, we don't care that you made a mistake. They're going, we'll actually like to have that GST that you've claimed back. So it's about saving our clients money. Not necessarily today, but potentially down the track. And some of the things that will surface is, duplicate payments. One of the clients that we worked with, I think we found about $4,000 worth of duplicate payments to suppliers. And they were incredibly grateful for that. In the scheme of the size of their business, was it a lot of money? Probably not. But in terms of did they want to be overpaying people? Absolutely not. And smart business people aren't. So data quality in any business, in financial information, is paramount, because what you need to be able to do as business owners is rely on that information without having to question the integrity of it before you need to rely on it. And what I mean by that is if you're perhaps looking at financing for new equipment, a new project, expansion, whatever, you want to be able to pull your financials today, get them to whoever needs to review them to make those decisions that are real-time decisions. And often, there's some timelines attached to that sort of response that you need. And having to wait for another month or, even a week for your bookkeeper and an accountant to just go through and check that the data's right, may actually preclude you from stepping into whatever it is that you need to do. So data quality is an enhancement against an enhancement alongside of real-time, high quality, when you need it, financial data. And that's why we use those tools with our clients, and where they're absolutely invaluable from our perspective.
My feedback is that we find out about the issue very soon and we can fix it quickly with a tweak or a phone call or an email, and we don't find out about it months down the track and then have to backdate and what have you. So many
All
people
of that,
in the many people in the call today are internal bookkeeping or an accounting function. Is Dext, I think you said Dext or Expert? Expert?
So Expert is one for data analytics. It's more aimed at the bookkeeping practices, more so than or bookkeeping and accounting practices, more so than individual businesses. But if you're working with an external accountant or an external bookkeeper, ask what tools they're using to look at the data quality of your financial information, because there's more than one out there. Dext Precision is another one, and you'll see that we've got Dext on there and under sort of two headings. One is Dext Prepare and the other is Dext Precision. It's an expansion on what Dext historically has done, and historically Dext has been a document extraction tool. So your supplier invoices would go into Dext. Dext would read the data on those, extract that data and move that transaction pre-coded with the attachment into your accounting file. They've stepped into sort of more of the data quality side as well. MindBridge is another one that looks at data quality, but ask the question of your internal bookkeeping team or your external bookkeeping service provider, how are you qualifying the quality of the data that is in our accounting system? Because if they're not starting to do that now, particularly your external providers, they will start to be challenged by people that are using these tools. And one of the comments I often hear is, AI is going to replace humans. And my response to that, and it's out there in the public domain from other people, is AI is not going to replace humans, but humans who use AI are going to replace humans who don't. So, you know, even within internally, and often one of the biggest pieces of resistance that you will find in adoption of any technology, and I'm not just talking about AI technology, but any sort of technology, can be internal mindsets. And, you know, I sit here and, as I said earlier, I started working when I was still using ledger books, but I've made it a purpose of mine to try and keep up with technology. And I appreciate that there's often factors that preclude people from stepping into that space. Some of it is just sort of hands up in the air, I don't want to know about it. Others, because it's unfamiliar, they're uncomfortable with it. And what I would do is challenge people to start thinking about what is next and look at how these products can be adopted within your businesses to enhance your data quality. So it's you know, there's stuff out there for practices, there's stuff out there for accounting and bookkeeping practices, but there is stuff out there already for businesses to use. Now, interestingly, the story around Expert is an interesting one, because the guys that set it up were actually business owners. They had small businesses themselves and actually got screwed over as a consequence of edited data, poor quality data, data that had been removed from their accounting ledgers. And the trigger for setting up a product like Expert was to protect other business owners from going through those same challenges. And you know, they lost huge amounts of money because other people within their firms were tampering with their accounting records. And that story is actually on their website. So, you know, this is what we're talking about. And, you know, and I know Grassroots is very, very focused on, you know, cyber awareness with their clients, and the prevalence of, you know, cyber intercepts. Having data quality tools can actually be a foil against some of that as well, because you're going to be able to see if, you know, somebody's perhaps doing something they shouldn't be, or if data's being amended and you're not expecting it to. So it's the whole cycle of work, not just the financial and the bookkeeping cycle, that these sorts of tools actually support and enhance.
Right. So can I just quickly circle back to the internal IT team? Is there a name that you have at the top of your head that they could go and look at, just in terms of the data quality tools?
Look, I'd start with Dext Precision. Ada might be another one, even though we've got that under financial reporting. You could potentially look at Expert. It is more focused on bookkeeping and accounting practices, but that doesn't mean to say that a business couldn't use it. The other thing that Expert has in it is great workflow management tools. So that might be an advantage if you've got a larger business and a larger financial management team, and the work that's being undertaken is done by different people within that team. But I would look at, you know, whilst I say Expert's not aimed at small businesses, there's nothing that precludes a small business from actually using it. But any of those tools, I would be more than comfortable in suggesting are worth looking at from a data quality perspective. Even if you're using Xero these days, they're starting to build some data quality aspects into it as well. Not sort of quite as front and center as what some of those other tools do. I can't speak more specifically about MYOB or QBO, but with all of the accounting products, it's like the, you know, the race to the finish. They're all doing something, somebody catches up and goes ahead, the next person does it. They're continuously iterating, and data quality is a huge focus for everybody out there at the moment.
It's a point I've got here, actually. The vendors that are rushing to get their AI products out the door and into the hands of clients. Just because they're there doesn't mean to say we need to use them, or how do we choose? I mean, this is a very broad question, and it's something that you probably can't answer. But do you have any insights on, you know, which tool, and will that change over time? This is a journey, and as you
Yeah.
said, they're all catching up with each other. No one wants to change accounting systems, but
Yeah. Look, I think strategically, when you're looking at selecting any tools to support your business, one of the key things I'm always looking at, you know, for my own business, but when I'm talking with clients, is integration. So what you don't want is technology and tools within your business that don't integrate with other things that you use. And, you know, in bookkeeper accounting world, we call it our app stack. So what is our application stack? What do we use, and how do we use it, and how does it all integrate? You don't want to be redoing the same thing in 3 systems. And that's quite the antithesis of the whole idea behind artificial intelligence. It's about simplifying workflows, not building complexity. So if you're looking at tools to support the bookkeeping cycle within your businesses or practices, if there's any bookkeepers on the call, look at what's integrating with the existing tools that you are using. And when I talk about integration, I do actually look at the depth of the integration, because I have seen a number of tools out there that say, you know, we integrate with Xero, but that integration is not necessarily a live integration. It's I need to push this button to integrate, or it actually only integrates at, you know, 10% of the data linkages that I would expect. So if you're looking and assessing any tools, find out what type of integration is it? Is it, you know, a push of data, or is it a live integration, and does it talk back and forth? And it's usually through APIs. What specifically integrates? So, you know, are you looking at only a small portion of the data set moving between the systems, or are you looking at all portions of the data set? And is that data set what's needed, or are you still going to have to top and tail it in another way? Is it changing, and will the vendors change? Absolutely, I think, David. And, you know, 15 years ago, the incumbents in the market from accounting software were the MYOBs and the QBOs, or the QuickBooks back then. Xero's came in and did some steamrolling. That's the market, and I suspect that there are products absolutely being developed out there at the moment that are likely to hit the market, you know, anytime from tomorrow onwards, that may disrupt some of the incumbents that are in there at the moment. So, you know, AI is tech faster. You know, we've seen the evolution of technology even over the last 50 years, and that chart of how it's being implemented and how fast it's moving is only just going to become steeper and steeper rather than flattening out. So I think from an internal business perspective, the best strategy I would look at to keep an eye on the market is talk to your service providers, your external service providers. So if you've got an accountant or a bookkeeper, it's amazing how close to technology those people actually are at the moment. Perhaps look at somebody within your business as being a tech champion. Look at places, you know, LinkedIn, funnily enough, is a great way to sort of keep on top of, you know, what tech is out there. There's probably some publications out there that you can sort of subscribe to that sort of keep you up to date on what emerging technology is there. I'm not a big fan of, you know, chopping and changing just for the sake of chopping and changing. And even sometimes if you're getting 80% of what you need out of it, it's probably worth sticking to if you've got all of the integration and sort of ticking those boxes as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the important thing is having an awareness of what's out there and how it's impacting not necessarily just your business, but potentially also your industry. And how is it going to allow you to step into the jobs to be done type concept, which if you're a business owner doing your own bookkeeping, if you want to be moving that off to the side and not doing that as strongly as you have previously, that frees you up to do the things that you want to do in your business. You know, you might be an awesome consultant or an awesome plumber or an awesome engineer, but you're losing time now because you're dealing with the day-to-day minutiae of, you know, financial management. So, you know, what is going to free up your time to allow you to do what you're passionate about and doing best within your business?
Right. Speaking of jobs to be done, one of a large job in medium-sized organizations is approvals of expenses and things like that. How do you see AI assisting with that at the moment, and where do you see that going?
Yeah. So again, David, there are already tools in the market that actually step into approvals processes. You can see that there with the likes of Dext Prepare, HubDoc, and Approval Max. So all three of them work on the concept of you've got your supplier document that comes into the system. There could be rules and algorithms. And again, this is sort of the fine line between what is automation and what is AI, and automation is probably the first step with AI. These documents are these tools are looking at those documents and extracting relevant information, and then Dext Prepare, as an example, has just brought out an approvals matrix. If this is from this supplier and it's over this dollar value, then it needs to be approved by this particular person in the practice or business. HubDoc's got very similar features around it. Approval Max is an awesome tool for doing this as well, because you can actually set up multi-tiered approval matrices. It could be dollar value driven, it could be supplier driven, it could be budget driven. So, all of these tools are now out there where instead of the business owner perhaps getting a pile of paperwork in a manila folder, landing on their desk every day or every 2 days, where they've literally got to go through and check everything and hit an approval on it, that can actually now be automated and simplified through technology. And the business owner might not care about a $50 bill from Officeworks, but they might care about a $5,000 bill from Officeworks and have oversight of that. So the $50 one might be routed through to their office manager, who's got the authority to approve that $50 Officeworks spend, but the business owner might want to see that $5,000 spend. Or, do they require purchase order approvals before the expenditures
Well,
actually
that's what my
occurred
next
as well?
question was going to be, whether we could do that earlier in the process.
Yeah. And again, this is where the human factor comes in, David, because these are just tools. This is everything that we're looking at here is tools. You've got to be able to define how you want these tools to operate within your business. So if you're a larger business that's got, maybe a management team, team leaders, you might have, more than one person sitting in the finance roles, how do you want the approvals process to run throughout your business? Because what happens in my business might be completely different to what needs to happen in your business. It could be because it's the industry. Think about the trades and constructions and going to Bunnings and spending money at Bunnings. I've worked with clients who have given Bunnings cards to their employees, an example, and we know that what's been spent on the cards has not actually ended up on site. So, how do you want those workflows to operate within your business? What are the risk assessments that need to be undertaken around your existing workflows? Where are the risk points for, financial fraud? And the reality is that fraud occurs more often than not by somebody who is within your business. And there's, hundreds and hundreds of examples on the internet. You've just got to Google them to talk about fraud being undertaken by people within the business. So where are your pain points? And this is where your humans come into it, because they're the ones that understand deeply what you do and how you operate and where those gaps in your processes are and how technology can fill those and support those. One of the interesting conversations that we often have with clients when we're talking about these types of tech solutions for those sorts of challenges is the cost of it. And one of the things that I would throw out to the audience is the whole concept of cost versus price. So yes, every tool, and we're working in as a service, a software as a service environment. And David, I know what Grassroots does is very much involved in that space as well, or managed service agreements and that. But consider some of it in investment, because if you're spending $40 or $50 a month now, what is that potentially saving you in making sure money's being spent on the right things at the right time, that there is a reduced risk of fraudulent activity being undertaken, that the data that you're utilising is of the highest quality. You could be working with organisations that require audits for whatever purposes. If you're sitting in the not-for-profit space, have there been correct authorisations for that expenditure against budgets? If you're working with grants, there might be particular grant reconciliations that you need to do where you can demonstrate those approvals processes. So think about the tools that are out there in the context of your business operations, and get the humans that understand what you do involved in reviewing and assessing and understanding how those workflows would be implemented. I'll take a breath now.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've launched into a space that's we are in all the time, that you can implement technology, but is the organization, how do you implement that in an organization? There's a lot of change management there. There's a lot of there's a lot of planning. There's a lot of thinking through the processes. Sometimes you don't want to automate a broken process that you've got now. You want to identify a better process and automate or enhance that process.
Yeah, yeah.
How I mean, I'm sitting here and know a little bit about it. How would you recommend our audience they go, this is great. What's my next step? Like, how do I start this process?
Yeah, look, find the person that can do that and has the knowledge to do it. So I've actually done this for a couple of different businesses, and literally what I do is I go into their business and stand by them side by side and follow the flow of information. You know, where does it start? Where does it end up? And then ask 100 questions along the way to understand why things are happening. Why do you have to send this and photocopy it 3 times and send it to the guy in the room upstairs? And the answer to that can be, I don't know, because that's what we've always done. And I think that's probably the legacy question in a lot of practices and businesses. Are we doing things because that's the way they've always been done? But what is the benefit we get out of doing something? So I sort of quite often say to people, I'm inherently lazy. I like to look for the shortest way between A and Z. And I don't want to have to double back and do things twice. And, we all hear about it in terms of workflow management. You only want to handle something once, and it should move on to the next important point in that workflow. So I think sometimes looking at each of the things that you're doing within your business and stepping through them and understanding what you're doing, but more importantly, why you're doing it. Is it being done because you had a business owner that had been stung 15 years ago by an internal staff member that ripped them off for $20,000? So they've just become hyper vigilant about every single penny that's going out the door. And is it time now that, that person perhaps takes a bit of a breath, understands that there's technology solutions that can streamline what's been put in as very mandrolic processes, and have that change management conversation. It could be, David, at the simplest level, that you don't have the right person in your business to be driving this forward. So if you've got a business owner who is quite strategic and looking at leveraging off of technology across their business, and they've got somebody in there that is absolutely resistant, then the question might be whether they're the right person in the business. And I know that sounds like a terrible thing. I was on a webinar the other day talking about AI in bookkeeping practices. And one of the questions that floated up is, what if I employ a new staff member and they don't want to use this technology? My response to that is, why are you employing them in the first place? The people in your business aren't driving the way it needs to run. You as a business owner actually needs to do that and drive the culture and the leadership and um, the protocols around it. And as with anything, and I know Grassroots has got an awesome leadership structure within there, and David and I've had some great conversations, but the leaders in the business need to drive it. It's not necessarily somebody else within your practice that will drive it if the leader is resistant as well. So you might have a champion in there, but if the leader's resistant, then you're going to sort of come across roadblocks. So I think it's assessing, the humans within your business, and who's the right fit to be doing the right thing. Are they the right people to have with it? But also as a business owner, you need to assume a leadership position on this, and not just do it from a tokenistic perspective either, not just say, yeah, I want this, you go ahead and do it. You've got to be actively involved, because if the people that are working with you in your business don't see you being authentic about it, then the chances of implementation and change and adaptation and adoption are going to be challenged stepping forward. So find the right people
Mm.
to help drive this is probably where I'm at, and assess it from a workflow perspective, step through and understand why things are happening and why they're being done.
I think from my experience, the business leader needs to either understand what's possible by their own investigation,
Yep.
or reach out to someone who does understand what's possible, and then pick the leverage points in the business, and work out in which order to
Mm,
implement. So rather than doing a massive, great big change, work out what
mm.
the best order of change is, and so it's not too onerous on the business.
Yeah. And sometimes, David, even the tools that are currently utilised within businesses may still be the perfect solutions. And the challenge might be that the people utilising them have just never been trained properly on
Mm,
how to use them.
absolutely.
And I see that regularly, even with accounting software. I come across really weird things that are in play simply because there's never been training. And I can't overstate the importance of learning how to use any tool to its maximum potential. You know, whether you're a chippy learning how to use your new bandsaw or whatever, you want to be able to use it in the way it's meant to be used, and you get the training to do so. So yeah, absolutely think about that.
And all the enhancements that are coming every
Yeah.
month and every quarter.
Yeah, that's why my hubby has such a big Bunnings bill, because he keeps upgrading on his saws and I don't know, but yeah.
I understand that. One last question about tools before we move on is we've spoken about the inputs. Now that there's outputs as well, and generally that's in reports or other forms of communication. What are you seeing happening beyond the profit and loss, beyond the standard
Yeah.
bookkeeping
That's
communications?
that's actually really interesting, and this is where I'm seeing some interesting AI outputs around financial reporting and analytics. So I think historically, as business owners and bookkeepers, what we've been used to doing is going into our accounting software and say running the P&L, running our eye over the P&L or the balance sheet and going, hang on a sec, that looks a bit weird, and then perhaps exporting out data in very linear format. So, export an account transactions list out to Excel, and then you sort of run through and have a look at those transactions to look at for any anomalies. What tools are now doing is saying, well, you can actually ask this piece of software to do an analysis on your balance sheet or an analysis on your P&L. And I'm not talking about just saying you've got, assets exceed liabilities and you've got equity, or you've got liabilities exceed assets and you've got negative equity or that. I'm talking about diving deeper and going, well, hang on a sec, do you realize, and if I flip back to profit and loss, do you realize your cost of goods sold has increased significantly over the last 2 months, but your revenues decreased? Do you think you might want to have a look at that? And then being able to interrogate that data further by saying, well, can you tell me if there's a particular transaction that is causing that COGS to have increased that's not usual in our pattern of spend.
And is this a
So
conversational, like ChatGPT
yeah,
conversational questioning
yeah,
of your accounting
yeah.
data?
Yeah, so experts currently doing that. You've got the
Hmm.
likes of Ada and Fathom doing it in different ways as well. But I can literally jump into expert, run up my business's P&L, or ask it to do an analysis of my P&L, just by a simple analyze my P&L for the last 6 months. And then I get their analysis and it says something and I go, oh, I might explore that. Can you give me more information? So this is where the way we're going to be reviewing our financial data is going to change. And I think the other consideration there too, David, is as a business owner, the way we look at our data is going to change. But who else is looking at our business data? Um, you've got the ATO looking at our business data. So when you submit your payroll via STP, or whether you're submitting superannuation, or whether you're submitting tax returns or taxable payment returns, from a personal perspective, your data is with Centrelink and all of those agencies. You've got data with real estate when you purchase property. You've got data when you purchase motor vehicles or boats, or put money in and out of your bank account. So AI and financial reporting and analytics isn't just happening within our businesses, it's being used by other organizations and agencies to analyze your data against a greater subset of data as well, to look for any anomalies and float that to the top. So you just have to, look at some of the ATO reviews that are out there at the moment. They're using massive, massive volumes of data to try and identify the people that are buying boats that don't have the income that matches it. So, we can use it internally in our businesses, but it is already significantly being used by other organisations and agencies.
Mm. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. We shall move on to leave a
Mm.
little bit of time at the end for questions and answers. Um, the next slide is about what other tools, general business tools in here that use AI. Now, this is not the purpose of this this webinar, but there are lots and they're
Yeah.
evolving all the time. So my question to you is, what have you used? What are you seeing your clients using? We don't need to go into a deep dive, but
Yeah,
What are you
look, I
seeing?
think we're remiss if we don't talk about these tools in the context of bookkeeping. So, as a business owner and a practice owner, I've used some Copilot stuff. I've used Grammarly. I've used chatbots, absolutely. Probably haven't stepped into sales and CRM so much because I just don't run that. Employment Hero, yes. Zapier, Otter AI, love my Otter AI. Fireflies for note taking. So now I don't have to sit in a meeting and take copious notes. I can actually just get a note taker do that for me and surface the summary that I can then pick up in 2 seconds flat and email out to whoever I'm communicating with. You've got the Canva is a really, really cool one that's out there, and I think most people have even got access to that as free. ChatGPT is the obvious one that sits there. So yes, they're all enhancers of productivity within your business, and some of them are, it depends on what you're wanting to do. So there are some tools that are sort of more appropriate depending on what it is. So Canva, for instance, is great at your design and creativity, and other things are project management. Note taking, if you're working in meetings, note taking is probably the simplest one to step into. I now no longer have paper notebooks with doctors writing in them. It's all nicely typed out and searchable as well. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I have to give a shout out to Microsoft Copilot. We were talking about integrating earlier,
Mm,
and if you are already using Microsoft Office, rather than using also a multitude of other tools, Copilot over the top of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and Teams does a fantastic job of utilizing AI and integrations there. I
mm,
can join a meeting 5 or 10 minutes late. That rarely happens, but I can, and ask it to give me a quick summary, and it just gives me a very quick summary of what's happened so I can participate
love
in
it.
the rest of the meeting.
Yep.
I can ask it questions about. I can not participate in the meeting and ask it questions about what are the key points that were discussed.
Mm,
Could be a project meeting that I couldn't be a part of. So most of us have Microsoft Office. So that Copilot would absolutely be something that I would be looking at for that.
mm, yep.
Very
Absolutely.
good. Um, and challenges and considerations for implementing AI. This is something that you wanted to specifically discuss. So
Yeah.
we've probably thought about a few of them and discussed a few of them, but other things that we've missed.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, David. There's a couple of questions that have come through chat about data security and data privacy, and they are paramount in anything that you do. So, the examples that I gave before with the P&L, we're not putting those into ChatGPT. We're actually putting those into a secure, or we're actually using a secure data set. So our client's data is actually not being exposed. In an open way. What's happening is there are things called large language models, and I would suggest Googling to sort of get the finer definition. But the large language models are often what sits across data sets, and it's those models that you use to ask the questions, and it uses the intelligence that it's taking from the broader, open AI type environment, but then applying those questions and interpretations to the closed data
Mm,
sets. So
mm,
data privacy has to be absolutely critical. And if you are, wanting to dip your toe into the likes of the chat GPTs, anonymize your data. Don't put anything in there that you wouldn't want to share with your best friend on Facebook or out in the wild web. An interesting thing, if you're using ChatGPT, is to go in and ask it what it knows about you, and what it can tell you. And that gave me some really interesting insights a couple of days ago when I did that. And it extracted information I didn't know was actually publicly available, right down to members of my team, which I thought was pretty interesting. Um, so yeah, please be conscious of data. Data
mm.
sovereignty is another thing. So when you are looking at these solutions, where is data being held? Ask those questions, and any vendor who is not prepared to answer that information would be one I would be crossing off my list. That should be information that is readily available to you.
Yeah, data sovereignty is a good one, and from a Microsoft, which is the majority of the tools we use, our clients can select, or we do it on their behalf, where their data is housed, and it's for many legal reasons, privacy reasons. Certainly, Europe GDPR is very strong on that. But that is a very important one. Like, for example, MailChimp, for example, you put a lot of data in that is not domiciled in Australia, or it wasn't, unless they've changed recently. Stuart has raised the question that you were talking about with putting financials into ChatGPT. Now, I don't know as much about ChatGPT, can't even say it, as I do Copilot, but certainly with Copilot, you can, if you have the Copilot and you're selecting your workspace as opposed to web, you can query your own data, because as you said, it's using the large language model to communicate. We're using the communication tools, but it's only communicating and not training the large language model on yours. And I believe the paid subscription of ChatGPT is similar to that, but I don't know for sure. So as Ben says there, we will get back to Stuart on that particular one.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, David. And the comment I would make is that if there's anything out there that's free, why? Because you're the commodity.
You are the product.
Yep, you are the product if it's free. So, and this goes back to what we were talking about previously about investing, and the concept of price versus cost as well. So free is not always cost effective. Yep.
Very good. Anything further in challenges and considerations?
Oh, excuse. Yeah, look, I think some of the questions is about the data accuracy as well, particularly when you're using the open models like ChatGPT. And you can see I've got some screenshots on there, and you can go out and do this yourself. But it's a bit funny when you ask ChatGPT how many R's are there in strawberry, and it comes back, very definitively that there are 2 R's. But then when you ask it to explain itself, the explanation appears to be, very, very logical from a ChatGPT perspective, but we know it's absolutely incorrect from a human perspective. So this is where it comes back to the humans are not going to disappear, because all AI and ChatGPT particularly at the moment is doing is looking at masses and masses of data and drawing its conclusions. And this is why something like ChatGPT may not be the best solution for perhaps doing data analytics, because you don't know how compromised the data is that's actually sitting in ChatGPT. And it's a training tool, it's a learning tool. They're feeding stuff into it to learn from. So consider, if you're obviously concerned about accuracy, and we're talking about financial data in businesses, that's critical. Think about the tools that have higher levels of accuracy, because the data set is a contained data set, not a broad data set. At ChatGPT, they call them hallucinations, and that's a classic hallucination from ChatGPT as well. The other thing that comes up too is, the ethics around using AI. Is it cheating? And, if you're talking about a uni student who's completing their exam using AI, then yeah, look, my ethics radar says that is cheating. But if you're somebody in a business and you need to do, I don't know, develop an Excel spreadsheet, and I've done this myself, and you know what you want cell A and cell Z to do with 5 other cells, but you don't have the skills in Excel to develop that formula, use ChatGPT. I've had some fabulous results out of there developing formulas just by putting prompts into ChatGPT. So there are times when it is cheating, absolutely, but there are times where it's about enhancing my productivity. I could have gone down a rabbit hole for 3 hours trying to find the perfect formula, and yet I was able to do that in 5 minutes, get what I needed to have done, and then move on to the next thing as well. So it's one of those things that I think ethically everybody needs to step into, with their own paradigms and expectations around it. One of the things I would like to share, if anybody's interested in sort of reading more about AI, is I was very fortunate. I can't share it into the chat, David. You might be able to. The
we
Zach
will send it
link
to everyone.
Yeah.
With the recording.
Yeah, there's a guy in the US called Zach Cass, no relation whatsoever, who's a futurist who steps very heavily into the AI space, and his background is in particularly ChatGPT, working for them, and OpenAI. His perspective on AI from a humanity perspective is actually really, really interesting. So if you're wanting to dive deeper into this, I actually recommend having a look at some of the stuff he's putting out. It's very challenging thinking, and often does answer some of the questions that we're talking about here in terms of, data security, impact on humanity, accuracy. What can we do with it, and particularly with our kids and grandkids, in my instance, coming into this world, how do we work with that as well?
Very good. Cass, we're going to be respectful of everyone's time. We have 30 seconds to go. So I'd just like to thank you and like to thank everyone for joining us here today. I hope everyone's picked up one or two useful tips, and we will see you at the next webinar. Thanks
for having me, David. Really appreciated.
Bye.